You want to see the galaxy? How about a trip to the outer rings? Zagama Beach, huh?
Hey guys, and welcome to my review of Starship Troopers Terran Command, released on Steam June 16th, 2022. Terran Command is a real-time strategy game developed by the Aristocrats and based in the Starship Troopers universe. As a massive fan of the 1997 Paul Verhoeven film adaptation of the book, I bought the game as soon as I could. In Starship Troopers, the Terran Federation wages war with an alien species called the Arachnids, a battle that is symbolic of the strife between democracy and communism in the 20th century. The bugs, which represent how effective communism would be in a species evolutionarily adapted to it, share a hive mind. This centralised control by brains and queens allows workers or warriors to work together in perfect coordination. That's the general theme of the book. This novel was later turned into a film in 1997, directed by Paul Verhoeven, and if you haven't seen it, I highly suggest you do. So onto the game. Terran Command is a single-player experience set over about 20 or so missions. The gameplay is very similar to the Company of Heroes games, where you control a squad of units that can be replenished and upgraded at your base camps, although you can't actually build structures like in a classic RTS. The first mission starts you off on Klendathu, which is the alien homeworld. Paying homage to the start of the film, you and a group of Federation troopers are torn to shreds whilst the cameras roll. This mission serves as a kind of teaser/tutorial. In going into this game, I wasn't sure if they were going to try to replicate the movie as closely as possible, or pay tributes here and there and try to be its own thing. I think they've done the latter. Once you're done with the teaser mission, you start the real campaign. It starts you off small with a group of rifle troopers securing townships that have been overrun by the Arachnids. Usually the first mission is easy, but this one actually packed a bit of a punch, and you learn very quickly that if you don't space your units apart properly, you're going to get eviscerated. The three main components of gameplay here are unit composition, formation, and timing. Not only have you got to pick the right units, you've got to have them staggered in such a way where they won't block each other's firing lines. Their formation optimization is indicated by a coloured indicator above the unit. If it's green, they're good to fire. If it's yellow, they're partially hindered, and if it's red, they're in dire straits. I'm going to go over the different unit types, because how you arrange your men in Terran Command is a huge part of your success in this game. You have an array of units at your disposal. First off is the basic rifleman. These guys aren't very good on their own, and it's best to have large groups of them to be effective. The second unit type you get access to is the engineer. These guys are a great utility unit as they can throw incendiary grenades, blocking bugs from reaching you. They can also build an array of different auto turrets, ranging from bullets to fire to rockets and grenades. These guys are incredibly useful, and I found myself using them in every mission. After you're a few missions in, you get access to the snipers. These guys, as you can imagine, are more about single target damage. But throughout the campaign, I found that I didn't use them as much, as you're mostly fighting hordes of enemies. It seems like a waste to be single targeting when there's AoE units at your disposal. Every unit in the game has two abilities you can pick from, once they've gained enough experience. The snipers have one that allows you to shoot a sensor flare that will distract enemies, and that's at least pretty useful when you're overwhelmed. Next up, you get to use the Tactical Officer. This is a singular utility unit and it allows you to buff your squad's movement speed and firing. I never found them that useful personally and prefer to choose other units that I'll go over next. Once you're a bit deeper into the campaign, you'll start to face off against armoured bugs, and these guys will tear you a new arsehole if you don't have the right firepower. This is where the higher damage squads come in. So here we've got the Rocket Troopers, who are a small group that fire RPGs and are essential in destroying larger tanker bugs. They're slow firing, but pretty much essential for those bigger targets. They have two upgrade paths, one of which fires a rocket that burns the ground, halting enemies, and the other is an armour-piercing type rocket. Then we have Mark II Troopers, who are a better version of Rocket Troopers. They are stronger and have more explosive power, and these guys are essential in killing medium armoured targets, and are essential for any type of army composition. There's an alternative to these Mark II troopers called the E-Pulse Troopers, who have energy weapons and have an ability that lets them overcharge their weapons to fire twice as fast in those tricky situations where you're getting stormed. I personally don't like them that much as they have downtime after their ability is used. Now on to the juicy Tier 3 units, containing one of my favourites. The Fleet Liaison is a one-man army. He is capable of holding the front lines, but will require defending with other troops. This unit is all about the abilities and they're extremely useful. The Fleet Liaison can assign drop zones to reinforce your men, call in bombing runs and orbital strikes, and even call in specialised marines to be instantly dropped onto the battlefield, which is incredibly useful. So now onto the two final units you get access to. First off, we have the Power Suit Troopers. The Power Suit Troopers are like souped up riflemen that pack a huge punch, replacing riflemen pretty much later in the game. They have an upgrade path that lets them use engineering abilities and fire rockets, so they're a bit of a jack of all trades. And last but not least, we have the M11 Marauder. If rocket troopers are the big boys, then M11 Marauders are in a whole different league. They're humongous armoured mechs that can take a lot of beating and dish it out well with their Gatling gun, flamethrower and howitzer. These guys are useful, but they're pretty slow at what they do, and I think I prefer using squads rather than mechs. There's an annoying mission later in the game where you have only 2 mechs at your disposal and have to make it through a city. This one sucks and felt boring as there wasn't much room for creativity. Now onto the campaign. The campaign comprises of 19 missions, varying in location and difficulty. Some of these missions have you rescuing colonists from the arachnid threat, and others have you holding off a base against hundreds of bugs storming you. Nearly every mission has a search and destroy element in which you have to destroy bug hives that act as a constant spawn point for these fuckers. There's always a trade-off when going after hives of how many men to leave defending and how many to go on the attack. I got caught out so many times spreading my units too thin and it fucked me over. Aside from that, there's a few stealth missions to break up the action, which have you rabbiting around in claustrophobic tunnels with only a few squads at your disposal. I found these kind of boring, but they do break up the pace of the larger scale missions, which is probably for the better. I won't spoil anything, but some of the final missions took me multiple retries and it was extremely chaotic and heart-poundingly intense. The scale of enemies and your army size increases to a point where there's a lot going on and you can't miss a beat. So what's the verdict?
What would you do if you were me?
Figuring things out for yourself is the only freedom anyone really has. Use that freedom. Make up your own mind, Rico.
Starship Troopers Terran Command is a tight, well-rounded experience. You're forced to use your brain to take advantage of terrain, unit composition and squad abilities. If you fuck these things up, you will die. The game can be unforgiving if you don't make the right choices, but you'll quickly learn when you need to use what abilities. It's got a satisfying learning curve that feels incredibly rewarding when you master it. Not to mention, the campaign missions are varied and difficult, giving you a good amount of time to sink into it. The story is pretty good, and it carries the torch into its own world of Starship Troopers in a way that's tantalising for fans of the film. The graphics look great, the game runs well without issues, and has had only one patch since release. A roadmap has been released for the year showing what's coming up next, and it looks like we've got a free DLC and a paid DLC, which is much welcome because I finished the campaign in about 10 hours. There's no multiplayer, which would have been nice, but I'm happy just to have gotten a game in this universe with a well-rounded campaign and gameplay. It's currently $43 Australian on the Steam store, and if you're a fan of the film or a fan of squad-based RTS games, I highly recommend picking it up. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch my review, and a big thank you to all my patrons. I'll catch you on the next one.